Hi everyone, I'm Oliver from Blendtuts.com, and in this video we are going to learn about motion tracking in Blender. Motion tracking let us analyze and track points into a video, and from that information then Blender creates a moving camera or object that mimics the movement of the real ones in the source footage. In this tutorial, what we are going to do is to take a video, track it, and then we will generate a 3D camera that matches the movement of the real one. This is called camera tracking. And why? Because then once we have the camera movement, we can add 3D objects to the scene that move accordingly to the background, making the integration between 3D and the real footage work together nicely and smoothly. Here I am in the movie clip editor. The scene is already tracked because I'm going to show you the result. Alright, so you know what we are going to aim for in this tutorial and better understand the process, okay? First, we need to follow some features, some points in the video through all the frames. So as you can see, I followed some points. Let's see, for example, that corner of that bench. As you can see, I followed it through the video. Right, there are more points like this one, for example. This is, as you can see, a little dirt in the floor. Here we have the point that I followed. And if I press play, you can see how I followed it through all the time that the dirt appears in the video. Same with this tree, right? And this is just for giving Blender information about points in the video, to feed Blender with information about the perspective of the scene. So if we press M to mute the video, the footage, and disable the path, you will see that just by looking the points in the video, we can understand a little the perspective, all right? We know that the objects that are far away move slower, and the ones that are very close to the camera move a lot faster. Okay, this is the effect called perspective shift or parallax effect. I will explain it to you later. And it's the base for Blender to analyze the perspective and the camera movement of a video. So let's enable this again. And as you can see, all the points are following some features in the video. There we go. So once we have all the points tracked, enough points, let's say, the more points we add and the better tracked they are, the better will be the information and the solution of the tracking, and the better will fit the objects after providing the camera movement, all right? Because there will be a lot of information about the perspective. If we have just a few of them, well, it can work, but it can fail sometimes, or it can just be enough, okay? Usually the minimum of markers per frame should be like 8 markers per frame. But a lot of times in big scenes like these ones, in which we have a background, a midground, and a foreground, 8 markers can be not enough. Okay, even if Blender let us calculate the scene, the movement of the camera with just 8 of them, they are probably not enough to define the perspective changes in all the video. Okay, so once we have these tracks, what we need to do is to go here and add the camera data. Camera data is something very important. But don't worry, because I will make this tutorial as if we didn't know the specifications of the camera, just by guessing and by letting Blender refine the solution to change a little these values, like the focal length or the distortion of the camera. Yeah, in case we find a video that we want to track, but we don't know even with which camera it was recorded, there is no problem, because Blender will help us doing it. And after inserting the camera data, we can tell Blender to calculate the motion of the camera, and it will generate a 3D scene with points. The points that we tracked in the video will be positioned in the 3D space, and the camera movement will be created. So as you can see, the camera movement, let's add it from here. As you can see, it's very similar, very close to the real one. And of course, I can go to the video, and let's say, for example, I want to add someone sitting in this bench. Okay, so I know that this point is from that is very close in distance to the position where I want to add someone, and the distance from the camera is the same. So if I select it here in the movie clip editor, I can go to the 3D scene and I can see that that point is here. So I have to add the person here, and it will fit the movie as if it was in that position. Ultimately, these points gives us information about the position of things in the video. Like for example, if I add this one that is in the background, as you can see, it's farther away than the previous point that I selected. And we can go even farther with this point, that if you can see, it's very far away. So as you can see, it's right here, right? And if I had more points more far away, they would be even far away. So yeah, it creates the points that we tracked in the video and place them in the 3D world. Now we have the camera movement. We can just start adding objects to the 3D scene, and as you can see, they will fit the video and the camera motion. There you have this monkey head. I can disable this plane, and just to show you, I can just go ahead and duplicate this monkey just a few times so you can see how it works. Let's go to the beginning of the video, and there you have it. As you can see, now we can integrate whatever we want in the scene. So in this first tutorial, I'm going to show you how to track the scene, how to track points in the video, and how to reconstruct the 3D scene and generate the camera movement. And in the next tutorial, I will show you how to add 3D objects to the scene and make the compositing that you saw at the beginning of the video with the monkey head already shaded with shadows and lights and material and everything projecting and fitting the background movie. Here I started Blender to start from the beginning right now, and the first thing we need to do is to go right here and open the movie clip editor, which is where we are going to load our footage and track it. So the first thing we need to do is to go right here and open our image sequence that we have right here. Just selecting the first one of the frames, it will automatically pick up all the rest. If you don't know how to convert a video to an image sequence, you may check the previous tutorial in which I explained how to do it, and also why it's better to use image sequences instead of videos. So let's open the clip, and here we have it now. As you can see, a lot of options appeared at the sides of this pane. And the first thing I want to show you is that here we have this blue, slightly blue line, okay? And if we press Alt-A to play the animation, it becomes a lighter blue. Okay, there we go. And here the video ends. So let's go to the last frame, place the cursor over the timeline and press E in the keyboard to pick that frame as the end frame of the frame range. All right, so now if we press Alt-A again to play the animation, we can see it in real time. What the blue line means is that the frames are cached, so we can watch them in real time. If they are not cached, we can't watch them in real time unless we have a very powerful computer that can handle the footage in real time without having it loaded before. Right, I'm going to show you a little tip to make that happen, and is that here in the user preferences, you can access them with Ctrl-Alt-U, or you can go here and pick the user preferences. And right here what we need is to go to the System tab, and at the bottom we have the Sequencer Clip Editor options. Here in the memory cache limit, as you can see, I have a pretty big amount of 8,000 megabytes, right, which would be like 8 gigabytes. By default, this amount is much lower, right? It depends on the amount of RAM memory you have in your computer. I have enough, so I put 8 gigabytes. What this will do is to let Blender use up to 8 gigabytes to cache the video, to store the video into the image sequence into the RAM memory allowing the faster access the next time we play it. So it will be very handy to work in real time later. And as we are going to work in this movie clip editor for a while, I will press Shift and space to work in full screen. All right, and the controls in this view are the usual in Blender. With middle mouse button, we can pan. With control and middle mouse button, we can zoom in and out. And with the scroll wheel, we can also zoom in and out. So we place this in the middle. And let's analyze the scene, the image sequence. We press Alt-A. As we can see, it moves pretty fast. I wanted this specific movement of camera, I recorded myself, because it will allow us to explain some little principles about tracking. All right. For example, we have objects in the background that will be occluded by objects in the midground, like that sign there. This sign back there is occluded by the post and the tree, right? So we are going to learn how to active and disable, how to enable and disable tracks. All right. So in some frames, they don't give Blender information about that track, but then they keep adding it again, right? Also, this point up here will be a little tricky because the trees are going in front of it all the time. Okay, the same happens with other stuff. Also, we have parts in the scene that are moving normally, but the ones that are closer to the camera move really fast, right? So we are going to use a lot of methods here to track this scene. Great, so we are in the movie clip editor. We have loaded our image sequence, and now let's start adding trackers, adding markers, and as we add them, I will be going to explain you the options that are here in the right and in the left. Also, these panels in the left and right, as always in Blender, you can hide them or show them by pressing T or N. All right. Also, we can go here and drag it to the border, or just click this plus button and put it back. All right. Generally, you need to know that the left panel is for general options and also for settings for default trackings. I mean, here in the tracking settings, if you set something up here, it means that every tracker, every marker that you add to the scene will use these tracking settings as a default. But then, after you create it, for changing the settings for that specific marker, you need to go to the right panel. Okay, let's do an example. How to create markers? We can just press here, add marker and move. And if we click and we move the mouse, we can just place it here, for example, because this is a point that I want to follow over the video. Also, alternatively, we can press Ctrl and left click, and it will create another marker. Now, let's see some controls for the markers. Now, how we move the markers? We can just press G, as in everything in Blender, to move. We can press rotate to rotate it. Then I will explain you why is this for. And we can press S to scale it up or down. Alternatively, we can also click here in this marker and just drag. Escape to cancel. Okay, so here we have this pattern. All right, this marker with this square, the square defines the area that Blender will look for in the next frame to follow this feature. All right, so if we go here to the track panel, we can just click here for going frame to frame, or click here to follow it until it loses the reference. Okay, so we can also track it forward or backward. We will see why is that later. So let's go for the next frame, and there we go. As you can see, with the left and right arrows, we can go back and forth through the frames. And here you can see that Blender followed the right point. So this is because in the second frame, this area of the image is very similar to this one. So Blender is going to search for it and place the marker in the new position. It will show this red line to show us the path that this marker is going through. Let's follow some more frames. There we go. So as you can see, here we have the path. The red line marks the keyframes before, and the blue one marks the keyframes after the current frame. And the marker is always, of course, in the position of the current frame. There we go. So we need to do this with every marker. As you can see, Blender only tracks the marker that we have selected. All right, so if you want to track automatically with these options here more than one track at a time, you need to select them before. Otherwise, it will only track the markers that you have selected, which is what I wanted in this case, because we are focusing in this one. Also, it's easier, of course, because now it's moving through the view and it's a little not comfortable. So we can press L in the keyboard, or we can just go here and press lock to selection. This means that Blender will follow the position of this marker and move the video instead of moving the marker. So as you can see, the marker is always in the center of the screen, which let us see better if it's following the right feature. So we can keep pressing here to let Blender follow this point, or we can make it manually by pressing Alt and right arrow to go faster. And as we can see that Blender is taking it pretty easily, it doesn't have problems to find the next frame. We can just press here or Ctrl T, as it tells us there. So with Ctrl T, it will be very fast. And as you can see, it tracked a lot of frames in a little amount of time. There we go. Okay. Let's press Alt and right click for the next one. And it's already disabled because this is already surpassing the limits of the video. But we know that it's here. So we can track it manually by pressing G and moving this marker to the position where the feature in the video is, which is right there. And in the next frame, this marker should be disabled. We know that it's disabled because we don't have these little squares in the corners, and we also don't have this this line with the square here, right? For disabling it, because this marker won't provide more perspective information to Blender because the feature it was following is already out of the scene. So what we need to do is to disable it, and we can disable it in two different ways. We can disable it here. As you can see now, the eye icon is pressed and it's enabled. So we can press it to disable it, and as you can see now it's just a square marking the pattern that will remain in that position but won't provide the Blender any information. We can select it again, we can enable it, and we can go to the next frame and press Shift and D to make the same, right? So Shift and D or pressing here. Also, as we don't want to touch this marker accidentally anymore because we already tracked it, we can just go here and lock it. Right, so now, even if we want, we can select it or drag it with the right mouse button. It's impossible because it's locked. We can select it to unlock it, of course, but we can't use it. All right. Instead of doing that, we can also press Ctrl L. To unlock it, we can press this button here, or we can just press Alt and L, and it will be unlocked in case we want to change something into that point. Okay, so those are the basics of adding markers and tracking points in the video. We are now going to see more settings for trackers and so on. So we can disable lock to selection. So now we can see, sorry, if we press Alt A, we can see that this point follows the right point in the video. There we go. And if we lock that position, we can see that that point is stable in the video, which is exactly what we want. So let's go for the next marker, this one. And in each one of these first markers, I will show you some of the features and some how to use them. And then we are going to use all what we learned into a more complex marker, like this one, for example, or some of them that are being occluded by other stuff in the scene. And then finally, I will put a time lapse because I will track a lot of markers in the scene, and I will just accelerate it so you not become bored by watching me tracking, because it can take a while. Okay, so for this track, as you can see, we can scale it for taking a bigger pattern, right? This is the pattern that we are going to follow. But now we are going to activate another thing, a new thing. So let's go here to the marker. And here we see some options for the marker. The position, for example, we can change the position of the marker by dragging this. Never used it, actually. The offset is something that I won't use also, but we can set the marker to be, the center of the marker to not be in the center of the pattern, right? For some things, this can be useful, but not this time. Also, here we have the pattern area. Here we can select the amount of the size of the pattern and the shape, because we can scale it not only in one direction. We can scale it only on Y by pressing S and then Y, and we can scale it on Y, or pressing S and X to scale it on X, or we can do it from here, right? Let's put it on the defaults, like 15 for example, and here's the search area, right? We can activate the search area right here, and as you can see now, we are seeing here another square outside the main square. What this does is that Blender will look for this pattern in the next frame around inside this square. So if the video is moving very fast and the pattern in the next frame is right here, for example, Blender won't catch it. We need a bigger search area, right? We can, by clicking here with the left mouse button, we can decrease it or increase it, because if the bigger the search area is, the more time it will take for Blender to calculate the next frame. So if it's very, very high, let's try it. Well, in this case, as is right here, it's going pretty fast, okay, and it's detecting really good. But if we decrease it, you can see that here it was lost because the movement between these two frames is very big. Between these ones is, well, it's almost there in the same position. But in this one, it's moving a lot, and as the search area is very small, it lost it. So we can increase the search area, and if we press Alt and right, you can see that now it took it right. Okay, so this is the search area. Also, we can click and drag to reposition the search area. Okay, in this case, if we go through the movie, we can see that as we are going with the camera to the left, almost everything here is moving to the right in the video. As you can see, the tree is always going to the right. So we can save Blender some work by decreasing the search area, and instead of moving it here, because it won't never be in this area. Or if it is, at some point, we can just reposition the search area again. But mainly, it will be always to the right. So we can put it in the right, and Blender will always search for this tree in the right. Okay, so we can just place it like this, and Blender will search for it there. There we have it. Now, another thing we need to keep in mind is when we track it with this button that will track all the scene, it will track it very, very fast. But sometimes I prefer, for example, and you may prefer it too, we may prefer to what is tracking, because sometimes it may be a little sliding and we want to avoid it. So we want to see exactly what is tracking over the time to be able to change it. So here in the tracking settings for this specific marker, let's go here, and here is the match, the keyframe, and the match to previous frame. We are going to see what that is later. And here is the speed. The fastest speed will just track it very fast and will show us as it tracks a few frames, all right? But we want to watch it. For example, we can see it at double time, or we can see it at double time, real time, or half or quarter of the real time. So if we put it on real time and we press Ctrl T or click right here, as you can see, it will track. All right, let's go back to this point, and let's say that the in this case is good. The track is good probably, but I wanted to show you how it works, and it was going out of the screen. So I want to delete this track to later show it to you better. So what we can do is to go right here. This will clean, this is not for cleaning this stuff, this is later, we will see it. But we can see here, clear after, clear before, or clear. If we press clear, it will clear all the track, all the path of this marker. If we press clear before, it will clear the things before, the red line. And if we press clear after, as you can see, it cleaned the blue line. So now if we go to the next frames, you can see that the marker is being disabled because we didn't track it yet. So let's go here. Let's press L to lock the view to this marker, and press Ctrl T. And you can see in real time how this marker follows that point. And here it's lost somehow because maybe it's a little blurred or something. So we can just go ahead and move it manually. And now, in case it fails again, we go in frame by frame by Alt and right arrow. It's working pretty fine. All right, here is lost. And as we don't see the full pattern, I'm going to let it disable there. And we can go back here and lock it. So now we already have two markers in the scene. That you can see that is working pretty good. Okay, now sometimes watching this path will distract you. It can help when you have a lot of tracks. You can see that the line that the path describes is very similar to the line that the other path we tracked before describes. So this will help you to discover errors in the track, because if this point is doing this movement and this point that is almost at the same distance from the camera, it has some spike or something, there is probably something wrong in that frame. Okay, so here what we can do is to go here to the marker display, and here we have several options to set what we see in this view. So we can disable the path, we can even disable the patterns, and we only see the little points there, and we can disable the search area. All right. Then also we can activate this one, which will show the markers in a not so intrusive way. But well, I almost never use it. Also, you can show the path, but here you can decide the length of the path that you want to see. For example, if you have a lot of markers, maybe you prefer to watch only the next few frames or the previous few frames instead of a very long line. Or probably you want to see a lot. The maximum is 50. So here you can see 50 frames after and 50 frames before, which is really a lot. We can disable it. And as you can see, there we have our markers working. So now let's look for some other marker and let's see some more features of this stuff. Let's press Ctrl and click. And here I want to tell you something about this feature here. We can add markers and move, and we have these two options. This will delete the selected track, right, the selected marker. And these detect features will create features automatically, right? But I don't want, I will click it, all right? And you will see what happens. All right, so as you can see, it created a lot of trackers, a lot of markers, but they are not probably in the better position. We can try with a scene. We can just create them, track them all automatically. All right, let's press Ctrl T with all of them selected. As you can see, they will be tracked. And we would need to do it again from here, for example, right? Because here we already have only a few of them. But as you can see, they are not working really good. Some of them are working, but another ones aren't. So let's press, okay, I don't want to do it. So you can use it to see if the automatic track works. And in 5 minutes, you can have a camera solution. But I recommend it to, if you want a good solution, I recommend it to make it manually, or at least then select the markers, the automatic markers that work better, and erase the bad ones or solve them manually. Right, so we have this other track right here. Okay, let's see what I can show you here. Let's take a look at the tracking settings, okay? Here in the motion, we can select what type of motion we want to follow, all right? Usually we only want the location, but sometimes the feature that we are going to track, the pattern, is moving or is changing in perspective or whatever, and we can also select the scale and the rotation and everything. But if you select anything but the location, any one of this, you probably need to set this from keyframe to previous frame. What this means is that this one in keyframe mode, Blender will look always for the frame, for the last keyframe that we added manually. Of course, we can go like this. Let's show the path again to help us understand it. Okay, here is tracking it. And now the keyframe that is looking for, the image that Blender is looking for, is the one that we set in the first frame where we added the marker, right? And it's always looking for that image. But if it changes the rotation, the perspective, or whatever, the pattern, which we have here, you can see here the pattern, and even we can move the marker from this window here. Here we can see the image that Blender is looking for the time. And here we can move it, as you can see, by dragging, clicking and dragging with left mouse button. So we want it right there. Okay, it's like, you know, zooming in and out. You have a zoom in version of the pattern that you are following right here. And as you can see now, here we have a blue line, which is the cached image sequence. And later we have a yellowish line. This yellowish line indicates that this tracker, this marker, is being tracked in this area, but after this point, it doesn't have any information about the position of it. All right. Then we have these darker yellow points, and that means that at that point we added a manual keyframe, right? We stored it manually. For example, here, if we keep tracking it, you can see that it's also putting it in yellow, but if we will go here, let's say that the tracker fails and it puts the marker here automatically, so we can go back and put it in the right place. And now, as you can see, we have another manual keyframe there. So if we have the marker set up in keyframe mode, it will always look for the previous keyframe that we set manually, right? So in cases where the object is rotating, the pattern will change. In features where the object is changing the perspective or changing the shadow, or it's blurred, and in some frames it's more blurred than in other ones, what we will have is to set it in previous frame. Because if it's looking for the keyframe that we set, as soon as the image changes a little, the pattern changes a little, Blender will lose it completely. And if we set it to previous frame, Blender will look for an image like this in the next frame, but in the next frame, right? Let's say we go to this frame, But in the next frame, if it changes, it will look for an image similar to the one in the previous frame instead of the previous keyframe. So Blender will adapt much better to changes in the pattern, right? Maybe later I can show it to you with some marker that is changing, right? In the next marker, I will select a point that we can use that feature so you can understand it. All right, then we have more options here that I want to show you. Here we have the margin, all right? This is the, as you can see, the distance from image boundary at which marker stops tracking. This is what happened before. As soon as the pattern that we are following touches the border of the image, Blender will lose it and will deactivate, will disable the marker. We can set here a bigger margin, right? In case we don't want the marker to go to the border. And if we want it to stop here, for example, for some reason, we can change it. Also, here we have the frames limit. This is an interesting thing because sometimes can happen that when we track it, when we make a track with this option, it starts tracking until the end of the video. And sometimes if we are looking to it, we see that it lost the pattern and is tracking another thing that we don't want, and we need to cancel it, go back, delete the frames that Blender did incorrectly, and then set it up again and all that. So what we can do here is to set a limit, like let's say 20 frames, for example, and when we use this option or press Ctrl T, let's press L to lock the camera to this marker. Also, something that I want to show you is that here it's locked. It shows locked in here in this corner when we lock the camera to a marker. But if we press L again, as you can see, it's unlocked, right? So it's a good way to know very quickly if we are locked in that frame, in that marker or not. So if we press Ctrl T, it will only track the next 20 frames as we have in this limit. So we can go little by little, and here we can see that it moved slightly to another position, so we can set it back and put it there. So you can see that this is failing a little because there is a change in perspective in the feature that we are following, right? So if we go back, from here we only are watching the front of that stone, but if we go forth, you can see that there is a little perspective. All right. In this case, we are going to let it go. And later, this is a part where we could use the previous frame stuff here. But well, let's do it this way. So Alt right arrow all the time. From time to time, just move it a little. All right, this is already the end of the video. Okay, so we already tracked this marker. Let's select it and press this thing here to lock it. There we are. So let's decrease this to something like 10, for example, to just see a few frames forward than before. And you can see those three markers already working. Now, let's say a marker, let's select a marker where we need to use the perspective, the previous frame stuff. Right, let's look for something that I can use. All right, let's go to this point here, for example. Okay, and let's make it smaller because the point that I want to follow is just this part here. If it's very big, the parts that are in the background will make it slide, all right? Because the parts in the background will move while this object, this white stuff, remains still. So let's put it like this. Let's move this to the right a little. And as you can see, I had an error. Well, it's not an error, but I shouldn't do this. I started I added the tracker in the frame 43, which is not where I should be. I should be at the beginning, but well, it doesn't matter because here is where we can use the feature to track backwards. So as you can see, it lost it. Let's go another one. It lost it again. And you know why it lost it? Because I set this to search for the feature in the right. And this point is quite similar, right? So in the next frame, in the previous frame, if we search backwards, the object is moving to the left instead of to the right. So what we need to do is to set it like this. If we have a very big search area, what can happen is that in the next frame, it looks still for this feature here, which is pretty close. What we can do is to make the search area smaller and put it to the left, so it never looks at this area. It will only look for the left. Okay, and let's press Alt and left, and there we go. You can see that there it found something strange, because in this frame probably we had too many blur. Right, this is not being good, but we will work with this anyway for now. Let's lock it so we are always center. Here it was lost. And then you will see how it changes once we use the previous frame instead of the keyframe. Because here it works pretty good, but as you could see, right, that is the first frame. As you could see, at some points it was lost and I had to create manual keyframes. And you know why? Because in this point where I started, this is a white area. But as we change the perspective, we only see the dark area. So Blender loses it. Right? It's not perfect, but well, for this tutorial explanation, it's okay. So what we are going to do here, because here the perspective still changes, and if we look to another part of the video, here is completely different. The feature is completely different. So this means that as soon as the feature changes a little, we will need to set a new keyframe so Blender start looking for the new shape. All right, here we have also this value, which is correlation, and this value will tell Blender the amount of difference that can have a frame with the previous one until it loses the reference. Okay, so let's say in this case it's 0.75. This means that Blender needs to find in the next frame a feature that is a 75% similar to the previous frame one. Well, in this case, it's not the previous frame, it's the previous keyframe. So, for example, in this case here, let's lock it. Well, it's already locked. Okay. So in this case, you can see that from here to here, the image changed, and apparently it's changed more than a 75% from the previous keyframe. So we need to set it back again. And from here to here, as the more white appears, the change is already bigger than the correlation. So we need to set it back again. All right, in very blurry footage, we may decrease the correlation so Blender always find it, or at least can follow it slightly, so we can reposition it manually a little bit. But well, usually this value is okay. So now from this frame, I'm going to set here previous frame, and hopefully it will work a lot better. So as you can see, the feature is changing a lot, but Blender still can track it. So let's say here the frames limit to 20. And as you can see, I set the frames limit to 20 in the previous marker, but this one still have it in 0. And this is because in the tracking settings, the frames limit is 0. If we put this on 20, and let's put this, let's say that we have a lot of markers that we need to follow with the previous frame option instead of the keyframe. We go here, pick the previous frame, And the search size, pattern size is okay. All right. The pre-pass option is something that Blender, before tracking it, analyzes the full video to have a better way for tracking it. Well, I don't know exactly how it works, but I know that when I use this option, Blender tracks features better. So I always use that option. So now I have these options here, and this means that the next frame, the next marker that I add will already come with these options predefined. All right, so it will look for the previous frame instead of keyframe by default. All right, so you need to keep that in mind. And now I will just press Ctrl T, and we are already at the end of the video. As you can see, with the previous keyframe, we didn't need to change any manual keyframe along the video. But here in this area, we had to do it like 3 or 4 times. So that is the difference between using keyframe and previous frame. So in features that you are following that changes through the video, because of perspective, because of shadows, because of blurriness, whatever, I recommend you to use the previous frame option to track it better. All right, let's lock that frame with Ctrl L. That is locked. Now save this again. And now let's select another feature that we can track. Right, let's select a more complex feature. Let's go to the beginning of the video. And here we have this feature. All right, we have that one. This one, I will need to track it almost manually. And let's try it. Right now, it's looking already for the previous frame. And instead of real time, as this one will be a pretty difficult one, a difficult feature, I'm going to decrease it to half the real time. So as you can see, this marker that I new created, now it comes already by default with the frames limit in 20, which is exactly what I want. So press Ctrl T, and as you can see, there we have a fail. And this is because at this point, Blender is taking this frame, and as the feature slides behind the stone, Blender is calculating the previous frame, and it now follows the stone. So in this case, let's go back and change it to keyframe, and let's see if it works better. If we press now Ctrl T, if we'll automatically replace this track. Let's go. And you can see that it was a little better, but still pretty bad. All right, so this means that we will have to practically work with it manually. So lock it. Let's change until this point is going pretty good. Let's put it right here. And here it already is behind the stone. So at this point, I will disable it. Now, if we go to the next frame, it has a track, but as it is bad, I'm going to delete it. Clear after. We can do it with Alt T. Clear after. Let's move a few frames, and here it already appears again. So press G to move it and place it already. So we can see that the feature is fitting our square. Okay, we can scale it down or up to make it fit, and we can see here that we have it covered. Okay, so it's important to look for this, because if it doesn't fit exactly, it will be a little messy then. Okay, so let's go. Now instead of going manually, as from here until it goes behind this tree, we can try to go frame by frame with Alt and right arrow, and it's working pretty fine. Here, just move it a little, and in the next frame is already behind the tree, so it's automatically disabled, all right, because we didn't track it still. Okay, we only went to the next frame. Here is already again. Let's go back here. Let's press Alt right arrow again and again and again and again. Here it will be a little conflicting. Move it a little. Again. And this frame is not good already because it's already behind the tree and we are not sure where the center is. So disable it with Shift D. And it appears there, but it's behind a stone again. And there we have it again. So we can go back and move it there. Okay, let's track it. Alt right arrow, remember that. Here's sliding a little. Let's center it again. And I don't like these frames because it's behind something, and even if it seems that it's complete, I think it's not because it's behind that stuff, as you can see. Okay, so let's wait until it appears entirely. There we have it entirely. So as you can see, this is a pretty difficult track because we have to practically do it manually all the time. So this is the tedious part, but well, it's cool anyway. So we can move it. Well, one tip is that when we move the tracker, the marker, you can press, if we are here in a very small area, very zoomed in the image, you can move it by pressing G, but if you press Shift, it will move very slowly, so you can precisely position the marker. Let's go. So as you can see in these frames, it changes a little, it's more blurry, and it probably is better in these cases to use the previous frame, right? But it doesn't matter. Let's go here, Alt right again. And here is already behind that. Move it back again. And here we are already at the end of the video. So let's take a look at how this was working. Press Alt-A to play. As you can see, when it appears, the marker follows it, and all the rest of the time, the marker is disabled, which is exactly what we want. So as you can see, here we have, where we have yellow stuff, a yellow line, is because we have the marker tracked. When we have a lighter yellow is because we added a manual keyframe, and the rest of the time, when it's only blue, is that the tracker is disabled because there is something between that feature and the camera. So we can't see that stuff. Okay, so now let's do something new. Let's close it by Control L, so it's locked. And let's actually press L now to lock the camera to this marker. And what I want to do is to go here, and here you have display, the display menu, right? This display menu will allow you to disable the footage, for example, and only see the markers, so you can see them there. Okay, we can show the 3D markers, but they won't be shown before we solve the final track to scene, so we will see that later. We can show also the name and the status. Sorry, because as you can see here, we have track 004 and it's locked. This is the status of the frame. Let's see if we can change the name. This will be sign. All right, so now we know that this tracker is the sign, right? So it's more recognizable. This could be the post, for example. This could be bench 1, I don't know. This could be tree 1, whatever name you want to give them. And well, usually I disable this. Also later, as we solve the solution, as we make the solution for the camera, it will also show us the average error that it has, all right? If the track is good, if it changes a lot through the video and is not good, and it will be an average error margin, all right? So we will see that later also. And let's see what else I can show you about this. Okay, let's disable the name status because I don't need them now. And here, let's disable the disabled tracks. So this means that when a track is disabled, we won't see them. Unless we have it selected, of course. Let's select another one. And as you can see now, as we go through the frames, here for example, here we have it. But when it passes behind the tree, is disabled and the marker is not being shown. But of course, as we are working, we need to watch them, we need to see them. So we can select them back and place them back if the object reappears through the video. Let's look for another feature that we can track. Probably, okay, let's go here. And let's track this little dot here. Let's make this smaller. But here, the movement, because this point is closer to the camera, this movement is very, very big. So let's increase this. But as I said before, we can move it to the right because the point will be always moving to the right. Okay, let's see if this point is, no, this is the first frame. And it is a very little point. Let's lock the camera to it and let's make it. Okay, it didn't work this time. This will be a tough one. That is why I wanted to show it to you. Okay, as you can see, it picks a different point. Let's decrease the search area. We need to play with this stuff. Didn't work again. Let's go to this point. Didn't work again. So these ones that are difficult, as you can see, we need to track them manually almost all the time. Probably at some point it will be easier to track and we can do it automatically, but in these frames it's a little blurry and it's a very slight feature. But when you select the features to track, you should select something that should be easy to watch. I mean, this point, for example, it's very easy to select the center, right? We could, for example, increase the size of the pattern and decrease the search area. Let's see if it's working now. Okay, as you can see, by increasing the pattern size, it has more reference to take, because actually if you put it like this, as you can see, the image here is not very recognizable, right? But instead, if it's this big, you can see that here is a clear dot in the middle of the pattern. And here we can do another thing. We can select the channels that the tracker is tracking. Okay, so we can disable them. We can make them just with them activated. Just put it here to watch the feature in black and white. Sometimes is better. And well, this is an advanced option. We don't want to use it in this tutorial, but here by disabling these markers, you can select which channel you want to track. Usually there are tracks that are, there are channels that are easier to track than others. For example, this one, it's red. Okay, so the red channel, as you can see, is wider. But if we watch the blue one, it's there is a little more contrast. Okay, so we can use them right now. This marker is only looking for the blue channel, so it's probably easier to track. Let's press Ctrl T, and there it lost it. So we need to go right here, just place it back, and here is lost because probably there is a big movement. Let's place it back here, put it in line, and keep tracking from here. Okay, so in the next frame, disabled. Let's lock it with Control L. Deselect it. And now we can go for something else. Let's select another marker that is pretty clear. Okay, I'm going to show you here something again. Okay, let's say I want to follow this feature. All right, as you can see, this feature, there is a change in the perspective. So here, the angle between these lines is smaller than the angle here. Here is almost a rectangle angle, but here is much less. So there is a perspective change. In this case, if I press here to use the keyframe, it's going to compare every frame to this image that we have in the frame we added the last keyframe. So we can start looking for it, and as you can see, it can't find it. Let's make it a little bigger. There we go. And here it's already lost because the difference is too high. Okay, so let's go back to the first frame. Let's clear after. And instead of keyframe, let's select previous frame. And it should work a little better. Let's make it bigger as before. And let's track it. And as you can see, it was tracked until that part was out of the frame. Of course, there is a little sliding, but we can tweak it. Okay, we can go here, for example, it's sliding a little, and track it from there and put it back in its place once it starts sliding. So as you can see, in features that are changing with perspective, shadows, lighting, contrast, or whatever, it's almost always better to use features that change with previous frame instead of keyframe. Okay, so I think I explained to you more or less the base options. Now there is another thing that I wanted to show you before I start the time lapse, and is that here we can save tracking settings. Okay, like here, for example, we set these frames limits to 20. We can just add a new motion tracking, and here we should have a new preset, so we don't need to set it up again each time we want to track. We just go here and select a new preset. Also, there's another thing, and is that here we probably have the default values, but we were probably setting up the current marker. So what we can do is to select the current marker, okay, with the settings that we want to apply as a default in the next markers, and just go here, copy from active track, and there you have the same options that we had here, right? So now every marker that we create will be as a default like the one that we had selected, which is something pretty handy. Also, there is this join feature here, which is something that will help us. For example, if we track this point that we tracked here, let's say that we track this part with this marker, but from here we track it with a different marker. So we can select both of the markers, tell Blender to join them, and the two tracks will become the same one. So then Blender will recognize that two markers are the same point. Okay, so it's something to keep in mind also. And well, I think this is probably something that you can use. Okay, you can select here custom color, okay, and you can give the color you want to that marker. So in this case, it's locked, so you can see it, but if it's unlocked, you can see it red. It doesn't matter here at all right now, if overall if it's locked, but once we solve the motion, the points generated in the 3D scene will have the color that we have here in the custom colors. So we can For example, these objects that are almost in line at the same distance, we can put them on a color to then in the 3D scene recognize where this area is very easily by looking at that color to the points. And well, I think that the options for the markers and how to track are already covered pretty much. So I'm going to save this, save it, okay. And let's start the time lapse with me just tracking a lot of points. If I find something that it's interesting to you while I track it, I will slow it down again and explain it. But well, I think that everything I will use from now on is almost what I explained until this part of the tutorial. So keep talking. I'll keep talking once the time lapse finishes. Great, so I have a lot of markers added to the scene, I tracked a lot of points, and I think we have enough information in all the parts of the video. Keep in mind that if you want to add some object in this area, for example, it's good if you have a lot of markers around that area, because that will make that area be stable in the final camera movement. Because in the last frames, as you can see, we have only a few points, only a few dots, and some of them only appear for a few frames. So there are chances that this part of the video, if we add some 3D object here, it will flicker a little because there is no enough information about this area, okay? But never mind, we are going to add stuff in the middle of the field and whatever, so no problem with that. Right, just wanted to tell you so you can keep it in mind when you have to do something like this. Okay, so what I want to do now is to check if every point is correct. And for doing that, I like to go here and press mute footage or press M in the keyboard. So this way, press Alt A to play, and you can see the points moving, and we can look for errors. If there is some point that moves strangely compared to the ones next to it, there is probably some issue with it. Oh, there I saw something. We go back. Move it. There we are. As you can see, this tracker is tracking a point, and when it reaches the border of the image, it's still tracking, and it's giving Blender wrong information. We need to go to this frame, which is the first one that we have not information about the feature this marker is tracking. Press Shift D to disable it, and oh, it's locked. Okay, so unlock it, Shift D to disable it, or we can also press the I, and now it's not giving more information. Okay, we can lock it again. All right. So now when it reaches that point, it's not giving information. Remember that you know that a point is working or is enabled when it has the dot in the middle of the square. If it doesn't have the dot, like now it's disabled, it means that that point is not providing information to Blender about the feature it's tracking. All right, so it's disabled. Now I think I saw something. Okay, there we have one. As you can see, it's tracking, and at this point, it's not tracking. Here it tracks again. Let's see what happened at that point. Okay, looks like there was some kind of reflection in the floor, and for a few frames we lost the reference, okay? And yeah, it was difficult to track, almost invisible, so I didn't track it. But Blender didn't disable it, so just disable it for these frames. So now it's disabled and now it's enabled again. Okay, just lock it and press M again, and let's check it again just to make sure everything is correct. And well, I don't see anything else. Another thing we can do is to activate the paths to see if we have some erratic track, right? We can see the paths, and if we analyze them, we can see that usually the markers in the same area move in a similar way. Okay, these three here move almost exactly the same. This one moves differently because it's in a closer plane, and this one moves a little slightly different because it's far away from the camera. These ones also are very far away from what I can tell, but as you can see, they have some similar movement. Right, so you can detect erratic stuff when a point is flickering a lot. Okay, let's check. This one is a little strange, so let's check it. Oh, okay, it's buried in the background, so there is a lot of difference from the moving of that point with the moving of the other ones. Okay, so I think everything is correct. So now let's prepare it. Let's save this, and let's go to the part when we need to reconstruct the scene in 3D. So we need to go here to the solve panel to solve the camera motion, but before I want to show you what is the tripod motion. If we enable it, as you can see, we lose some of the options because when we activate the tripod motion, we actually don't need perspective information, because when we rotate the camera from a tripod, the image that we see is actually like a moving image, like a pen. Is not there is not perspective change, and I'm going to explain you that before we go on. I made a very little and simple scene to show you the difference between shooting a video in a tripod and with the camera moving with the hand or in a Steadicam or whatever. All right. So if we rotate the camera from a tripod, as you can see, the objects are in line. These three cubes are in line. If we rotate the camera, you can see that the cubes change its position and rotation in the view, but they are still in line. There is no perspective change. Okay, this happens because when we rotate the camera, we are not changing the perspective, the point of view. We are only changing what we see. So if we go here, for example, those three cubes look the same from here than from here, right? The perspective change between them is always the same. In the other hand, if we move the camera, you can see that the position, the perspective shift between the cubes change a lot. The ones that are far away move a lot slower, and the ones that are very close to the camera move a lot faster, right? This is the effect called perspective shift or parallax effect, and this is what allows Blender to know where the camera is in each point and where the points are on each frame, because it detects the difference between this corner and this corner over time. So if we move the camera, in this time we have, let's create a grease pencil here to explain to you. Let's get a grease pencil, new in the view. Okay, so here we have this point. Sorry, here we have this point. And here we have this point. Okay, if we move the camera, as you can see, the difference between them is completely opposite. Sorry, it wasn't that one. This and this one. Okay, the perspective is completely opposite. This one, if we trace a vertical line, the one that is closer moves from the left to the right. Okay, while the one here also displays a little in the space, but the one that is closer is displacing a lot more. With this in mind, we know that in this case we don't want to activate the tripod motion, but if you shot the video from a tripod, you should check it so it only calculates the rotation of the camera and not the position and perspective and everything. Okay, so once we have this, let's press camera motion. And this, as you can see here, was calculating, and now we have here at the bottom the solve error of 1.3. This is actually a lot, right? Solve error is considered good under 1, all right? If it's between 1 and 3, can be still acceptable, but it's better if we keep it under 1. Of course, the best tracking ever would have a solve error of 0. Okay, but we are going to be a little humble this time and try to keep it under 1. So like 0.5 or 0.8 or 0.7 will be acceptable, and we will already be able to integrate 3 objects into it and they will fit. Okay, but if we need something that fits perfectly, the floor or whatever, we really need the camera information and everything to get the perfect track, and also have a really good image resolution and quality, so the points are very clearly seen by the naked eye, so we can follow them and they are perfect. So if we have a perfect track, it will fit perfectly, but in this case, as some points are slightly sliding through the video, there will be some error. Also, it's a very big shot. Some points are appearing and disappearing, entering and going out of the scene. We also have this part, the last part of the video, can be a little problematic because in this area we don't have enough references, because we have this reference here, all right, these references here, these markers, but these markers only last for a few frames in the shot. So Blender can't actually take a lot of information from them because they almost, all right, these 2 markers here also don't exist through the video, only for 5 or 6 frames. So as we don't have enough information in this area, it will probably have problems through this area. Just keep in mind that if we want to add something here, for example, it's better that we have a lot of markers in that area, so it will be more stable in that area. The more markers and the more time the markers appear in the video, the better they will behave. Okay, so if we put a 3D object in this area, it will be okay, but if we put it here, it will probably be flickering a little and sliding a little over the video. Okay, so with this in mind, we already solved the camera. We have an error of 1.3, but let's see what we have first, so then we can tweak it. So let's go here. I want to create here a 3D view, and I'm actually going to divide it. Let's press T and T to hide that panel. And in this one, I want to look from the camera, pressing 0 in the numpad. And in this one, I want a 3D view. Okay. So now let's select the camera, and in the constraints menu, let's add a constraint, which is camera solver. And this will take automatically the solution we made from this track. Okay, and as we can see here, we are watching already the points. And if I press play, as you can see, the camera is moving already. And as you can see here, we already have our camera movement. So this is great. Now we need to make it fit with the scene, of course, because this is not useful at all, because we have all these markers that should be in the floor and they are floating around with the wrong scale and everything. So let's see how we can solve that problem. So let's go here to the movie clip editor again. And here we have reconstruction options, or we can go here and switch to the reconstruction mode. Here in the reconstruction mode, we have several options. Okay, but as we probably need to go to the tracking again later, we need to be here in this mode. So for not being switching between modes all the time, I will use these options here, which are exactly the same. Okay, so what I need is to pick 3 markers, right? Let's disable the path because I don't need it anymore. So let's pick 3 of these markers that are in the floor, and marking a triangle big enough Blender will see that 3 markers in the floor orienting all the scene and the camera. So let's go to reconstruction and set floor. Okay, so now we have all the markers sitting on the floor. Next step is to take the origin. So we select this point because I want it to be the middle of the scene. And let's go to reconstruction and set origin. Okay, so all the points moved to position that point in the origin. And now finally I need to orient it. So as I want this line to be the y-axis, let's pick this point and it will orient it so between these 2 points, between the origin and this point, it will set the y-axis. So let's go to reconstruction, set y-axis, and as you can see, it was rotated already. And now I need the scale. How to pick the scale? Well, we can just scale here the camera, but to not make it manually, let's go here, pick these 2 markers, and I know that between these 2 markers, the real measure is around 1 meter and 80 centimeters. So let's go to reconstruction, set the scale, and here let's write 1.8. Press enter, and now we have everything set. Okay, next step is go here, and in the clip options, we can set it as background. So if I press it, you can see that we already have that clip as the background of the camera view, which is exactly what I needed. Okay, now I can see the points and everything, and let's press play to see what happens. And well, looks like we already have our scene tracked and we can add 3D objects. But this is not exactly correct still. We need to correct some stuff. Okay, so first let's press N, and here in motion tracking, as you can see, if I disable it, we don't see the points. But for now, as we are going to set up some things, I want to see them. But they are way too big, so I can slide this slider to set a smaller size for the points. So we can see them, but they are not interfering a lot. And the next thing I want to do for now is to open this background images options. And as you can see, it's rendering it undistorted, but there is no distortion for now being calculated. We are going to see that now. But I want the opacity to be 100%. And what I'm going to do to align the floor exactly or as perfectly as I can, it won't be perfect because not having the camera measurements and everything, it will be a little difficult, but we will try our best. So let's go, let's select this, right here in this view, we need also to keep this small, okay? So let's select this one, let's move it 1 unit. So it's sitting on the floor, now we can scale it, okay. So let's scale this plane that I just created. Scale it a lot, place it. Okay, actually in the origin, let's scale it even more. Let's go to the edit mode, press W, press subdivide, and now here from the subdivide options, I just open this panel pressing T, and I can divide it a few more times. Okay, so let's press T again to not show that. Let's press T here, and to hide that panel. Exit from the edit mode, and what I need now is to go to the wireframe mode. So with the cursor over this view, press set, and we see the wireframe. But I want to see over the floor, I want to see the wireframe of the plane to see if the perspective fits the original video. So let's go right here to the object options, and here in the display options, we can set here draw all edges. So now, as you can see, when we are outside of the edit mode, we can see the edges working fine. And I actually go to the edit mode, select this loop by pressing Alt and right click on an edge and move it on the x-axis to place it right there. Okay. Press play. And as you can see here, we have some problems. All right. In the first part of the video, it is looking pretty good, but here is completely disaligned. All right, we can activate this one. Let's go here, and in the object options, we probably can set it here to wireframe. So we can see the box in 3D, but the wireframe, the floor, we can see it in wireframe. Okay. So no problem at all. We still just solved it. But now I want to set it up and set the distortion and everything so we can take it a little farther. So instead of taking the frames 1 and 30, let's select some frames that have a substantial difference in perspective with the same markers in the view. So let's go ahead and select, for example, let's pick 28 as the first one, and I want all these markers to be in the next keyframe, but with a substantial perspective shift. So set here 28, okay. Let's move ahead, and with these markers 59. So 59. There we go. Let's pick the camera motion again. It's completing the solution. Okay, and now the solve error is almost the same. So as you could see, the keyframe was not the problem. All right, no problem. Here we have the focal length of 24, which is the automatic calculated by Blender. Well, it's not the calculated, it's the default. All right, so instead of picking the default, let's go here to refine, and instead of nothing, let's refine the focal length. So Blender will try to get a better focal length basing on this measure here. Okay. So let's go here, camera motion, and here you can see is refining solution now, which means that now it guessed a different focal length for the scene. And now the solve error is a little smaller, which means that we are probably going for the right path. Okay, but before I set up everything again to align it and everything, we're going to see how we can make it even better. All right, I will try to get it under 1. So we are going to calculate the distortion of the lens. So let's go here to the distortion mode, right there. And as you can see here in the camera data, we have these lens distortion parameters, all right? K1, K2, and K3. Usually the K1 is the one that is used. The K2 and K3 almost never are used. K2 probably, but K3 I never used it. All right, but the K1 is the most important one, which is the general distortion. These ones affect more the borders. All right, so for making it, we need to find some straight line in the field, like this one, this line here. And here we have some options, like if we press line here, we can draw a line. There we go. And as you can see, it's not completely straight. This is because the lens, the video is taken with a pretty wide angle, and the lens is distorting the image. So we need to calculate the distortion to increase the to make it better, to make the solving better. And now we have the line set here. We can just go here and tweak a little this value. As you can see, the line gets a little distorted, and here is when it fits, like in 0292. Okay, let's try with another line like this one. We can also draw a straight line without going here by just pressing Ctrl D and again left clicking. Okay, and as you can see, it's distorting it pretty well. We can do it also with a horizontal line like this one, and this is not really good. Let's try to decrease it. Well, this is not really good. Can be that line is not completely straight in the reality also. So let's quit that line, and let's, for example, try with this one that should be straight, and it's being distorted a lot. Okay, anyway, with these ones the distortion is working, and these ones I'm sure they are straight, okay, because these ones are the lines for the field, so they should be completely straight. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing the calculation with this value, I'm going to tell Blender, let's go again to the tracking panel, and let's close this, let's go to the solve panel, and here, instead of refining the focal length, I wanted to refine focal length and K1 distortion. Right, so now it will know that we have some distortion in K1, so it will try to calculate it through the motion of the markers, all right, because the markers, when they move to the borders, they will be also affected by the distortion, so Blender will try to calculate it to undistorted. So let's press camera motion. You can see that now it's taking a little more time because it needs to calculate more stuff. Come on, Blender. Refining solution, and we're almost done. Come on. Yeah, it's taking pretty long. I don't feel really good about it, and indeed this error is way bigger than what we have before, so it's of course not good. We need to keep it. Wow, you can see here the focal length is really big. Let's take a look at what's happening here in this frame. Well, as you can see, it's everything is wrong. Okay, everything is wrong. So okay, let's go again to this one. This K1 is really big. I don't know why. So let's go to 0.02. Okay. And actually, let's go here and disable the grease pencil. I don't want to see it anymore for now. And let's calculate it again to see if we are lucky this time. Okay, this was faster, and as you can see now we have a solve error of 0.8. All right, this is way better than before. Let's see the values that Blender took. Focal length 28 and the K1 distortion is 0.05. Okay, so okay, let's see if I can even improve it a little more. All right, even if this one I'm sure, because I did it before. All right, I'm sure that this is going to work pretty fine, but I want to show you another way you can even improve it even more. Okay, so here there is in this viewport, you can see the movement of the trackers. These lines mark the speed, right? It's showing us the speed of the markers, and it's not a traditional animation curve, all right? Here you can see the speed in X and Y. The red one is in the X axis, and the green one is in the Y axis. Okay, so as you can see here, this shape, even in these lines, you need to look for spikes like these ones, all right? But as these ones, every marker has spikes. Is probably a spike in the movement of the camera, all right? So there is no problem. The problem is when you see a lone line, right? One only. So it's probably an error in the movement of a given marker. This that you see here is not actually wrong, okay? This is very normal, and this is because this is the first frame in which the marker appears, and this is the next frame. So the difference in speed between this point, which is 0, and the next one is really big. But in the rest of the frames, the speed is more or less constant. As you can see here in this video, the speed in X is way higher than the speed in Y, and this is because the movement of the camera is almost completely horizontal. There is almost no movement vertically, only for the camera because it's doing by hand, there is no stabilization. So there is a little vertical movement, but generally it's an horizontal movement, and that's because, and that's why you have a bigger movement. Also, you can guess that these curves here at the top are from the objects, from the markers that are in the bottom of the video, which are the ones that move faster. All right, the ones that are here are probably from the background, and we are going to take a look at it, because if we click on a line of these ones, we can go back here and we will have selected the marker. Okay, let's see where it is. Okay, is this one here. So let's go here. And as you can see, it's one of the ones that are in the bottom of the video. If we select one of these, I guess that is almost surely in the background. So as you can see, is this one. Okay, very in the background. Okay. So as you can see, that curves are pretty handy, and not in this case because I was pretty careful when tracking, but sometimes if you track, if you do a lot of automatic tracking or press Ctrl T instead of going frame to frame, controlling that everything goes right, you can improve it a lot by going to that viewer, and you will find a lot of spikes probably, and you will be able to improve the solution. All right. Sometimes you have probably I don't know, a tracker, a marker like the ones I fixed before, that the feature it was tracking goes out of the screen, and that tracker still remain there. So the change in the speed is very, very big in that frame, because it changes from being moving to be completely static. So you can watch for that spike, and you can go to that marker and see what's wrong on that specific frame, all right, and solve it or disable it or whatever you want. So it's a handy way to watch for errors in the tracking. All right, so I don't want to bore you anymore with the theory and this stuff. So let's go to place everything where it should be. So let's select a few of these ones, like these three, to create a big enough triangle. Let's go to reconstruction and set them as the floor. As you can see that now we have the floor there. Now we need to go to this one, reconstruction, set origin. So now that is the center of the field. And now we want to pick this one to orient the camera, and this one will be the y-axis. So let's reconstruction, set y-axis, and there we have it. Let's take a look. And as you can see, this time it's still not perfect, but it's better than before, and it's pretty good. So we can even, as you can see, even rotate this a little bit. Okay, let's go select the camera and press dot in the keyboard. There we go, or just select here the 3D cursor to rotate the camera from the center. All right, so we can adjust this line a little to make this line here fit the one in the video. There we go. Also press N, and let's make sure that it's rendering this image undistorted. As you can see, now there is a difference because we have actually calculated some distortion in the tracking, right, when we solved the camera motion. So here is rendering it undistorted, and here is the original video. So sometimes probably when you press play here, you won't see it in real time, and it's because it's rendering undistorted. All right, so it has to distort the video, and it takes a little for computers that are not really powerful. So maybe you need to check that out. In this case, I will leave it as render undistorted because it runs okay. And now I need to set the scale. So let's go back to the movie clip editor. Let's select these two things here, or maybe these two. Let's go to reconstruction, set a scale, and with one is really actually pretty big. So I'm going to trick it, and I'm going to do it to make it a little bigger, okay, to that point, okay, until that line fits the border of the field. Okay, so now with that said, let's go here, let's let the camera again, rotate it a little bit like that. Okay, so it fits. Press play. What happened? Okay, press play. As you can see, this part here in the end of the video doesn't fit exactly. Okay, but as I said, in that part of the video, we don't have enough references for Blender to calculate exactly the perspective. Okay, and as you can see here, if I select this edge and move it here, it doesn't fit with the perspective, all right? Here it looks like it's fit, but here not, here a little almost. But in this part here, it's already very confusing because Blender doesn't have enough information of these points. Okay, so let's go from the edit mode. But as you can see at the beginning here, I can add here another line, and it's fitting really good because in this area we have enough tracking points. Okay, actually we can add, select this one and move it right here. So as you can see, it's fitting. There we go. We can also take this one and move into this line. So I think it's working pretty good. All right, we could already add 3D stuff to the on the top of it. What I'm going to do now is to just, so you can see how it works, just duplicate a few of these ones. Oh crap. All right, let's duplicate this like this. Okay, and another one. Okay, enough. So let's now deactivate the motion tracking because I don't want the points anymore. I just want the floor and the cubes on top of the video to see how it works. So let's press play. And as you can see, we could already add 3D objects to our scene. Right? In the next tutorial, we will see how to add a 3D object, how to cast shadows over the video, and how to composite it, how to integrate it so it looks realistic over the video. So I hope you learned something from this video. I hope you learn how to track stuff. It's a very funny thing. I like it a lot because then it allows you to integrate everything into the 3D scene. So I hope you like it, and happy blending. See you in the next tutorial.